Hi and welcome back. In the last video, we learned about how to record a macro. A macro, which is a set of commands to execute a specific task, is stored in a procedure. In VBA, two common types of procedures are sub-procedure and function procedure. When you record a macro in Excel, Excel creates a sub-procedure and stores the code in that. There are two main differences between a sub-procedure and a function procedure. First, a function procedure does calculation and returns a value, whereas the sub-procedure does not return a value. Second, a function can also be used as a formula in a worksheet. And when it is used as a formula in a worksheet, it is referred to as user-defined function or simply UDF. We will understand UDF a little more later in this video. So let's begin and understand what is a sub-procedure and a function procedure. So let's quickly launch the Visual Basic Editor. If you're not familiar with the Visual Basic Editor, then I highly recommend watching the video Visual Basic Editor and Introduction. Let's quickly launch the Visual Basic Editor by pressing the shortcut key Alt F11. We will now create our first sub-procedure. To do that, let's insert a module by right-clicking on VBA project and clicking on Insert and then clicking on Module. Here we will write our first sub-procedure. The sub-procedure starts with the declaration sub and then the name of the procedure. So for the time being, I'll just say name of procedure. I'll come to this in a moment. And then you have the start and close brackets or parenthesis, and then you press the enter key. The sub procedure ends in an end sub declaration. In between, you can have one or more than one statement or commands. Now let's come to the naming part. As far as naming convention goes, there are certain rules that you must follow. When you're naming a sub procedure or a function procedure, you must use a letter as the first character. It has to be an alphabet. You cannot use a space or a dot, which is a period. You can't even use exclamation mark or any other special characters like at, ampersand, dollar, hash, etc. The name cannot exceed 255 characters. I actually do not see why you should even name a procedure which is more than 25 to 30 characters. VBA also has certain reserved keywords. You cannot use these reserved keywords as name of your procedures. I personally use a name which just by looking at it tells me what the procedure does. The names are case insensitive, so I use a mix of lowercase and uppercase characters. It makes it much more easier to read. One more thing, you cannot have two or more procedures with the same name. So let's give a name to our procedure. So let's first decide what our procedure will do. Since we are just starting to program, let's do a very simple hello world message box procedure. So I will call my procedure show message box. So here, like I said, the name is case insensitive. So whether you keep the S capital or M capital or B capital, it does not make any difference. If you notice, I used a mix of characters, so you can do that. However, you cannot use the same name again. So if I copy this and I paste it here and I make everything small, SMB, this is not right. Because see, the moment you do that, the second will get automatically updated to reflect the name. You cannot have two procedures with the same name. So I'm going to delete this and I'm going to change this to show message. Now let's write our first command to show the message box, which is msg box hello world. To run a procedure, you can either click on this button or you can also press F5. So I'm going to click on this button and we see our message box. So I'll click on OK. This is a very simple sub-procedure. We can also create sub-procedures where we can pass arguments. Passing the arguments are absolutely optional. This particular procedure does not have any arguments. Now let's take another example where we will call one procedure from the other using arguments. Let's create another procedure and I'll call it sub show customize message box. And the argument that I'm going to specify is msg as string. And then I will type the command to show the message box msg box prompt equal to msg. And in the first procedure, what I will do is I'll copy this name and I will paste it here. So what I'm doing here is I'm telling this procedure to call this procedure and use this string as an argument. So when I run this, see what happens. I get my hello world message box. In this procedure, we had only one argument. If you wish, you can also pass multiple arguments. And you can do that by typing a comma after the first argument and then specifying a second argument. And if there is a third argument, then you type a comma after the second argument and then you specify the third argument and so on. Let's say I want to show a title for my message box. So I will call this argument msg title as string. And here I will change this to title equal to msg title. So now let's insert a title. When you press the comma button, you will notice that Excel notifies us that it is expecting a title for this argument. So let's give it a title, welcome message. And now let's run this. When you run this, you will get your message box with the title welcome message and the relevant hello world message. So let's click on OK. There are many occasions when you want to pass an argument, and then there are certain occasions where you do not want to pass an argument. However, when you don't pass an argument, you do not want your code to error out. For example, if I do not pass the title, I don't want my code to error out. For that, you have to use the word optional. The optional arguments are added after the mandatory ones. So if you want to make this argument optional, insert the word optional. Now this MSG title becomes optional. So if you do not pass the title, the code will still work. Let's test this. So I'm going to delete this. When I run this, you will notice that the code ran without any errors. However, I did not get any title on the message box. And that is obvious because we did not pass any argument. What if I want to handle a situation where the title is not passed? This is because this procedure can be called from several procedures, where some of them may pass a title and the others may not. So let's handle that. For that, I'm going to use an if statement. So I will say if MSG title is not blank, then show me this message. Else show me only this part of that command. Now what will happen here is, if no title is given, then Excel will use the default title. So I click on the sub and then click on run, and I get hello world with the default title, which is Microsoft Excel. In this procedure, we used two arguments, one mandatory, one optional. You can add more optional arguments if you want. For example, what kind of message box style should I show? So I'm going to declare another optional argument called MSG box style as integer. And I'm going to tweak this code so that we can handle the MSG box style as well. I'm going to copy this, and after then I'm going to press the enter key, and then I will say if MSG box style is not equal to 0, then. Do not go too much into the if then else statement. I will cover this in one of the future videos. Right now I'm just showing you how to handle the different arguments within the sub procedure. So here the title is not blank and the style is also not 0. So the message box that I want to show is with the message, the title and the style. So I'll say buttons equal to MSG box style. And if there is no style mentioned, then I just want this part of the command. And in the else part of this if, I'm saying that there is no title. So I'm going to copy this entire piece of code. I'm going to paste it here, and I'm going to remove the title part from the entire code because there is no title. So no title, but there is a message box style. So show the message box style. If there is no message box style, then only show the message. Now, before we get into the message box style, let me explain something about the different kind of message box styles. When you type MSG box and you press space, you're supposed to pass a prompt. I'm just going to pass a blank prompt at the moment, and then I'm going to press the comma button. And you will notice that Excel presents with a list of different styles. Let me choose VB information. So I can use VB information as the style, or I can use its underlying value, which is 64. So I'm going to delete this, and then I will press comma. Let's pass a title, welcome message. And then I'll press comma again, and message box style is VB information. Now when I run this code, see what happens. And I get the message box with the title and the message, and do you see this blue information icon? That's because of the style that we chose. If we remove this, the code will still work because it's an optional argument, but you will not see the information mark. So we saw how we can use multiple arguments in a procedure. If you do not want to pass an optional value, it's okay. And I'm not only talking about the optional value in the end, but in the middle as well. However, you cannot ignore that argument. So if I do not want to give a title, I just cannot say show customized message box message, comma, and then I type the message box style. I can't do that because it is expecting MSG title. And if you don't want to specify title, press a comma again so that it is blank. So remember, the arguments have to be passed in a particular sequence. For example, you pass the message, the title, and then the message box style. Now I'm going to share something else with you. I'm going to delete this. When you press space, you will notice that Excel prompts that the first argument is a message, second is a title, and third is the message box style. However, you will notice that there are square brackets around the second and the third argument. The square brackets means that these arguments are optional. So whenever you see a square bracket around an argument, it means that argument is optional. You can choose whether you want to pass it or you want to simply leave it. Now the next thing, the arguments can be of two types, ByRef or ByVal. By default, arguments are of ByRef type. ByRef stands for by reference. This means if a variable is submitted as a ByRef type, its reference will be transmitted. So if you change the value of the variable in the procedure, then the value will be transmitted back to the calling procedure. Let's take an example. I'm going to delete everything and I'm going to write a new procedure called sub ByRef example. And I will create one more procedure called sub show message box and change value. The argument that I will give is msg as string. Like I mentioned, by default arguments are of ByRef type. So you can also type this as ByRef msg as string. Let's declare a variable called msg as string and let's assign a value to it. msg is equal to hello world, and we will pass this value to this procedure. Next, I'm going to use this argument to show the message box, msg box msg. And I will also change the value of this variable to see you later. I'm going to copy this and paste it again. So what I'm trying to do here is I've assigned a value to msg and then I will run this. The value will be passed via this argument to this message box and then the value of the msg will get changed. And once the value is changed, I will rerun this procedure with the msg. So if the value changed, then when I'm passing it again through this argument, then I should see message box see you later. Let's test this. So I run this, I get hello world, which is absolutely fine as expected. And when I click on OK, I see you later. So I'm going to click on OK. Now what exactly happened here? Like I said, the argument is passed as ByRef. So if you have a message string and if you change the value, then that value is passed back to the calling procedure. Now let's test ByVal. ByVal stands for by value. Unlike ByRef, ByVal transmits the value, which means that the value will not get modified. Let's understand this using an example. I'm going to change this to ByVal example. Everything else remains the same. Here, instead of ByRef, I use ByVal. Now, when I run this message, see what happens. The first message is the hello world, which is OK. When I click on OK, I still see hello world and I do not see you later. That is because when you use ByVal, even though the value is modified here, it is not passed back to the calling procedure. Here the value of msg remains what it was earlier, which is hello world. So when you ran this message box, you got hello world, and when you ran it again, since the value was not modified, it used the original value, which is hello world. So we saw how ByRef and ByVal works. We've also understood how a sub procedure works. Now let's understand what exactly is a function procedure. The function procedure is almost similar to the sub procedure. The VBA function procedure begins with the declaration statement function. So if you remember, in the sub procedure it started with sub. In function procedure it starts with function, and then you have function name, start parenthesis, and close parenthesis, and you press enter. The function procedure ends with an end function. The naming convention of the function is the same as the sub procedure. It has to start with a character and you have to follow the same rules which I explained earlier. In between the function and end function, you can either have one statement or you can have multiple statements to do the relevant calculation. Let's say I want to create a function to calculate the total cost of apples that I buy. So I'm going to call this function get total cost. And to calculate the total cost, I need the base price of the apple and the quantity that I bought. So let's declare those arguments. Our first argument will be apple base price as double. Since the price can have decimals, so I'm going to declare it as double. And then apple quantity as long. To calculate the total cost, I will type get total cost is equal to apple base price multiplied by apple quantity. And my function is ready. Now let's declare a sub procedure, sub get apple cost. Here I will declare few variables and initialize the value and finally pass those values to this function. The first one is dim base price as double, dim qty as long, which is the quantity, and dim total as double. Now let's assign few values. Base price is equal to 15, quantity is equal to 5. I'm not going to get into denominations, so this can be 15 euros, 15 USD, whatever. So quantity is 5 kg, let's say. And we will store the total value of the apples in this variable. The basic math says that I need to multiply the base price with the quantity. So why do I need a separate function for this? A function can not only be used with this procedure, but it can also be used for other procedures. You can calculate cost for other fruits as well. Now let's pass the values to this function. So I say total is equal to get total cost, start parenthesis, it is expecting a base price. So I paste the base price here, then I press comma and it is asking for the quantity. I've done that, I close the parenthesis. And then I will say MSG box total. Let's see whether the code was able to calculate the total cost. Now when I run this, I get 75, which is 15 multiplied by 5. So we use the function to do a certain calculation and then return the value to the calling procedure. This makes the function procedure different than a sub procedure. A function procedure, like I said earlier, returns the value after doing calculations. Here it calculated the total cost and then it returned to the calling procedure. Just like we saw in the sub procedure, you can pass these arguments as ByRef or ByVal. You can also pass optional arguments. Let's say there are certain taxes which are to be applied. For one fruit, there might be taxes, and for the other fruits, there are no taxes. In that case, what you can do is optional fruit taxes as double. Now let's bring taxes into our calculation. So I will say dim sub cost as double. Sub cost is equal to apple base price into apple quantity. dim final cost as double. Final cost is equal to sub cost plus sub cost multiplied by the fruit taxes, and get total cost is equal to final cost. Let's say I want to pass 18%. 18% can also be written as 0.18. So when I run this, see what happens. I get 88.5, which is correct because 18% of 75 is 13.5. And when you add 13.5 to 75, you get 88.5. So this way, you can also have optional arguments. In the beginning of the video, I had mentioned that you can use the function as a formula in a worksheet as well. And when you do that, the function is referred to as UDF, which is user defined function. I'm going to use the same function get total cost in the worksheet. So let's quickly go to the worksheet. Here I will say apple base price. And here I will say quantity and taxes. So apple base price is 15, quantity is 5, taxes is 18%. And here let's say I want to show total cost. So I'll type equal to, and then we'll start typing our function name, which is get. The moment you type get, you notice how Excel prompts with the name of our function. Select that and press the tab key. Here, the first thing that we have to give is the base price. So I'm going to select this cell. The second thing we have to give is the quantity, and the third is the taxes. And I'm going to close the parenthesis and I press the enter key. You notice how it calculated 88.5 just as we had seen in the message box. So here we use the function as a user defined function, as a formula in a worksheet. And if I do not specify the taxes, see what happens. It shows you 75. The code did not break because the taxes is an optional argument. Here. Since the function returns a value, you can also specify the data type of the returned value. So I can say as double. If you do not specify this data type, then it will be considered a variant. I will be covering about data types in my next video. So we saw how we can use the function as a formula in a worksheet. A quick recap. In this video, we learned about the two common types of procedures in VBA, sub-procedure and function procedures. We also learned the differences between them, how they differ from each other. A function does some calculations and returns a value, whereas a sub-procedure does not return a value. A function can also be used as a worksheet formula, and when it is used as a worksheet formula, it is referred to as user-defined function or simply UDF. If you still have any questions, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below, or you can always email me on support@tamexcel.com. Just a quick reminder, I will be posting 2 videos every week, one on Monday and the other on Thursday. If you like the way I present the videos and you would like to support the channel, then please watch other videos, drop a few likes and subscribe to this channel by clicking on the bell icon. And I will see you on Thursday when I talk about variables, data types and constants.